Today in our 2012 Chevrolet Equinox, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Roadmaster Universal High Power Diode Wiring Kit, part number RM-154. And to help us with our installation, we're also going to be using the Pollack 6-pole round pin trailer wiring socket for the vehicle end, part number PK11609. Our diodes are going to allow us to take the signal from our RV and transfer them to our Equinox so we can get down the road safely and everybody knows if we're changing lanes, slowing down, or coming to a stop. Now the big benefit to the diodes is the fact that it's not going to change anything on the outside of our vehicle, and we're not going to have to set up those magnetic lights each time that we tow. It's going to be a one-time installation that's going to tap into our existing wiring on our Equinox, so we're not going to have to deal with everything every time we tow. The nice thing about our diodes is that it is going to protect our vehicle wiring. It's going to keep any kind of backfeeding or short circuits from happening that may arise on the motorhome end. Our kit's going to come with everything you need to get it installed, including the diodes, all the connectors necessary, and the wiring. So now that we've seen the end result of our diodes, let's show you how to get it installed. To begin our installation, if we look on the front here, we have a spot to mount our electrical that's already on our base plate. So that's where we're going to want to start with our wiring. Our wiring does come with two 4-pole ends on it. However, we're not going to be using the 4-pole connector. So we're going to take our wire and we're just going to cut as close as we can to the connector itself so we don't lose any wire. And I'm going to cut the connector off. We can take our 4-pole wire, and if we come underneath and behind this bottom air dam here, I'm going to feed my wires up until I can reach them behind the bumper here and pull them through. That way I have a little bit of slack coming out towards the mounting spot. We don't need a whole lot, we just want to make sure we have some to work with. I'm just going to wrap the wires around so I don't have to worry about it falling back through. And now I'm going to take the long section of the wire and I'm going to run it all the way back to the back by my taillights. Now the only thing to really pay attention to when you're routing this is you want to stay away from any kind of heat sources or any moving parts, because there are going to be quite a bit up here. So you want to make sure that you tie it up securely and you stay away from those things. So I'm going to go ahead and route this and then I'll show you how I did it. So after I had my wire come through the fascia here, it came out underneath this plastic air dam. I routed it over towards the driver's side, going around the subframe, and I tied it along the frame periodically and went back, went over the cross member, started following these factory lines all the way back till I got towards my fuel tank here. And I went towards the outside a little bit. I went up over the rear axle and subframe. And I went towards the outside to stay as far away from my exhaust as I could. And I started tying it to some of these factory wiring lines over here until finally I came to this corner. So now that we have our wiring towards the outside and at the very back of our vehicle, we're going to separate each one of these wires. I went ahead and cut the other end of the 4-pole connector off, and you can see there's going to be a little bit of separation of the wires anyway. So we just want to pull the wires until we can separate them all the way back to that last anchor point that we have. So you just keep pulling the wires till they separate and until all 4 of them aren't together anymore. Now that we have all 4 wires separated, we're going to move up top and we're going to go to start to take out our taillight assemblies. To remove our taillight, we're going to open our rear hatch, and then we'll have 2 little plastic covers that are on the inside. So we're going to take a flathead screwdriver or a trim panel tool, and we can pop those covers out. And behind there, we're going to have a fastener that we're going to have to pull out on the top and the bottom. So you're going to grab a 10mm socket, and we can pull the bolts out. And with those removed, we can grab the tail light You kind of want to give it a wiggle. And the idea is to pull straight back. You don't want to bend out too far because there are some alignment tabs that you don't want to break. But giving it a little wiggle and pulling back should release it. And once we have it released, if we turn it over, we'll find the plug that's connecting our wiring. We're going to push in on that tab, and we'll release the plug, and we can set our taillight assembly aside. And we'll go ahead and do that for the other side too. With both taillights removed, we're going to take a circuit tester, and I'm going to check each one of these pins to figure out which one is my taillight circuit. So I went ahead and turned the headlights on so I can see which one is going to be my taillight circuit. So I'm going to take your tester and probe each one until we get a solid signal. And it doesn't hurt to make sure that we're not getting a false signal and checking the other pins. So it's this second pin from the end. If we come back to the wire, it's going to be the brown wire. So we're going to want to write that down, or remember that our brown wire is our taillight signal. I'm going to go ahead and turn my headlights off and turn my left turn signal on. That way I can isolate that signal. So when I go back and I probe each one of my pins, I'm looking for an intermittent signal, so it should be flashing just like the turn signal. So it's this end pin here which corresponds with the yellow wire that has a black stripe on it. So that's going to be our left turn signal. Now we're going to go ahead and repeat that same process of testing each one of our pins for each signal on the passenger side as well. So over here on the passenger side, our taillight signal is still that same brown colored wire, and the location for our turn signal is the same, except this is going to be a green wire with a white stripe. So again, on the right side, brown is still our taillight signal, and the green with the white stripe is our turn signal. So now that we've identified all of our circuits, we're going to need to bring our wires up so we can make our connections. So right here where the body meets the bumper here, I'm going to go down through this hole. I'm going to be using an airline tube that I had laying around. You can use a string with something tied to the bottom for some weight, a coat hanger, really anything you can get that's going to allow you to go from the top here down to the bottom so you can reach those wires. And once you feed it through, you may have to reach up and grab the airline tube so you can get access down at the bottom. And out of all of our 4 wires, we're going to be attaching the brown and yellow wire, but we're going to leave the green and white down below for now. So I'm going to take the end of my yellow and brown wires, and I'm going to attach it to my airline tube using some electrical tape. Then I'll pull my airline tube back up. Now you may want to kind of help guide it a little bit so it doesn't get caught. You don't rip the tape off. But once we have our wires up, you want to make sure that you pull all the excess slack out and that it doesn't get tangled up on the bottom and doesn't get wrapped up in the green and white wires either. Now with my brown and yellow wire up through my taillight area, I'm going to take a zip tie. I'm going to tie it to these other wires towards the top to give myself an anchor point so I don't have to worry about them falling back down. Now you're probably going to have a little bit of tape that's on the wires for your taillight socket. I'm just going to go ahead and remove that so we have a little bit more room to work with the wires. And we'll go ahead and start with our yellow wire from underneath, which is going to be our left turn and brake signal. So if you remember, that's going to be the yellow wire with the black stripe coming out of our socket. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to come down a little bit from the plug itself. I'm going to cut that wire in half, and then I'm going to strip back both ends. We're going to want to grab one of the diodes that has all the blue connectors on it. I'm going to go ahead and take a connector and slide it over our stripped wire, and we'll crimp it in place. And we're going to take our diode. We'll take the other connector off. And we'll notice that we're going to have an in and an out side. There's going to be two terminals on the in terminal side and one out. The out is going to go towards our tail light socket closest to the assembly. So we'll take that wire with the spade terminal on it, put it onto our diode, and then the other side, it doesn't matter which one we go into, we just want to go into the inside of the diode. Now we should have that one last spade terminal, and we're going to take our yellow wire, and we're going to estimate about how much wire we need. It's always helpful to give yourself a little bit of extra room. And we'll cut our wire, and we'll strip it back, and put that last spade terminal on there. Now these wires do have this plastic coating on there that does sometimes make it a little bit of a problem stripping them, but if you just peel some of it back before you strip the wire, it should help a little bit. And that's going to go into the other inside on the diode. Now our taillight signal is going to be relatively the same, but just a little bit different. We're still going to cut the wire in half, strip back both ends, and put two blue spade terminals on there. So with both of our blue connectors in place, we're going to take our brown wire, and this time we're going to be using a yellow spade connector. So again, we'll just kind of estimate how much we need and cut the wire, except this time we're going to hold on to the excess wire and we're going to strip back both ends, the excess as well as the wire that's coming from the bottom of the car. We're going to take the two ends of our stripped wire and twist them together. We'll put them into our yellow spade terminal. This one's a little bit bigger, so I can accept both of the wires in there. And we'll crimp it in place. And this again is going to go into the other side of the in terminal on our taillight diode. Now the free end of our brown wire that had the excess that's connected, we're going to find the end of it and we're going to pass it back down through the body and the bumper here so we can reach it down below to meet up with the green and white wire. Now that we're back underneath, we're going to take our white wire, and this is going to be our ground wire. So we're going to want to find a spot that's nice and flat that we can attach it to. So right here at the bottom of the vehicle would be a good spot. So go ahead and cut our wire back, trim that excess off. We'll strip back the end of the wire. We can take the included ring terminal in our kit, slide it over the stripped end of our wire, and we'll crimp it in place. Now they're also going to provide us with this self-tapping screw. So I'm going to take this nut driver and go right into the bottom of the sheet metal. Now you want this to be tight enough that that ring terminal doesn't move, but you don't want to go too much and strip it out. Now our brown and green wire is going to have to go over to the passenger side. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pass my wire through this channel here in the rear bumper. So to help me, I'm going to take my airline tube that I used earlier. I'm just going to feed it through until I can get to the other side. And once it's sticking out the other side, I can come back. I'm going to find my brown and green wire. I'm going to attach it to my airline tube again using some electrical tape, and I can pull it through. You want to make sure you pull all that slack out. There's no loose wire in there or it could get wadded up. Since my airline tube's still attached, instead of coming from the top going down, I'll see if I can take my airline tube and feed it up so I can bring my wires up to the taillight section. Now I'll pull all the excess out, making sure all the wire is up to the top. So again, I'm just going to anchor my wires up here. I don't have to worry about them falling down and losing them. and we can start making our connections over here. Now it's going to be exactly the same as the other side. It's just going to be a straight connection. Our tail light wire on our socket's going to be brown. It's going to go to our brown wire coming from our harness. And then the green and white wire is going to connect with the green wire coming from beneath also. With all the connections made, if we flip our diodes over, you're going to notice it has some double-sided foam tape on it. I'm going to go ahead and remove the backing off of each one. And you can stick this directly to the body, but since there is a limited space back here, I'm actually just going to stick them together. That way they're not going to be moving around too much. Then we can grab our taillight assembly. We take our plug, plug it back in, make sure that all of our wires and diodes are out of the way, and we can put the taillight back into position. We can put our hardware back in. And we can put those plastic caps back in place. The caps, you'll notice that it's got a little notch on it sticking out. You want that to be facing up, and then it'll snap back in. We'll go ahead and put the other taillight in as well. So now would be the time that we wire our plug up. However, we're going to be running one more wire for our charge line so that our battery doesn't go dead on our Equinox when we're towing it. So we're going to run that wire, and then we'll show you how to wire up the plug. We're going to have a set screw that's going to be on the top kind of corner. We're going to loosen that up and remove it. You want to be careful because these are extremely easy to lose. We'll open up the door, and you can take that same screwdriver and we're just going to push the terminals out till they fall out. So now with the center section out, we're going to open the door on the plug. We're going to pass all our wires from the back. We're going to slide the plug as far back as we can so we have as much room to work with the wires as we can. Now in the back of the terminal, it's going to be extremely hard to see, but if we look very closely, they're all going to be labeled. We're going to have T for trailer marker, which will be our taillight signal, the brown wire. Next to that, we'll have a G for ground, which will be our white wire. L for left turn, the yellow wire. R for right turn, which will be our green wire. And then the center pin is going to get our red wire for our power. So now we're going to strip back each one of our wires. So we're going to start with our center pin. We're going to loosen up the set screw. You don't want to take these all the way out, you just want to loosen them up. And we'll take our red wire, we'll slide our wire into the terminal, and I always like to leave just a tiny bit of copper wire sticking out of the top. Not enough to where it would cause any kind of crossover connections, but that way you know that the connection is going to be good because it's metal to metal, and we don't have to worry about the insulation causing any kind of bad connections. And we'll tighten it up. And we'll just go around repeating, putting all the other wires in place. With all of our connections made, we're going to open that door back up. But if you pay attention to the plug itself, we're going to have to line that hole up with the hole in the plug. On the other side of the hole, there's going to be a little notch. And on the inside of the plug, there's a small notch that it's going to fit into. So it's only going to go in one way, but you want to try to get it as close as you can and make sure that hole lines back up with the outside of our plug. You can take that small screw, get it started, and we can tighten it back up. Now what I like to do, since there's no kind of rubber cover or anything back here, is I'm going to take some dielectric grease. I'm actually just going to fill this entire area up. And once that whole cavity is full, I'll seal it up with some electrical tape. And hopefully this will keep out any kind of moisture, debris, or anything else from getting inside those connections and causing a corrosion buildup. I'm just going to wrap all the wires as well with some electrical tape to kind of help protect the wires a little bit, but mainly to kind of hide them on the front of our vehicle. That way we don't have to see such brightly colored wires in the grill area. We'll just go as high as we can. We can tuck the excess back in there, and we can mount our plug up. I'm using a self-tapping screw to go right into these two posts that's on my base plate. Now the kit doesn't come with it, but it's going to be, the kit doesn't come with these, but it is going to be the easiest way to mount this up. So now the final step is to go ahead and test our circuits to make sure everything's working properly. If I put my taillights on, we can see that those are working, as well as my left turn signal, my brake lights, and my right turn signal. So all we have left to do now is hook up to our motorhome and hit the road. That'll finish up your look at the Roadmaster Universal High Power Diode Wiring Kit, part number RM-154 on our 2012 Chevrolet Equinox.